In our Ask Mixing with Mike section, I have a question that came in and recently, and it was someone who actually lives in Australia, excuse me. And they said, I'm a musician with basic performance skills. How do I start producing music? And I think what they were looking at from this particular question, they had Ableton because somebody had recommended it, but it really wasn't stylistically what they were looking for. They primarily play guitar and sing, and just wanted to learn arranging and kind of use the their computer. They're very good with computers, and using that for actually learning how to compose and write. Now, what applications can do in terms of working and helping you develop your skills is dependent upon your level of musicianship. So, generally, when you work more along the lines of Ableton, you're getting some things that are kind of, to a large degree, kind of canned or pre-processed. You're primarily dealing with a lot of loops, and you could deal with programs. Fruity Loops or FL Studio Pro is another one that's kind of like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's actually great. I really like using that, particularly with Logic and working with the loop libraries and stuff like that, just to kind of build like a basic idea of something. And you start throwing some elements in, and you come up with a basic groove and a feel, and you can really quickly audition things and figure out whether they work well or not. So from that perspective, if you had just basic music skills and some, good basic, understanding of how some of these applications work, then you have to say, all right, if I have the most limited amount of skills and you want to work with um, uh, production programs that have the most amount of resources and sort of as in the form of more pre-canned loops. And then, if you work within a particular style of music, then get a library of loops that fits within that, and you just start throwing things together that way. And what it'll do is it won't give you necessarily finished sounding productions, but what it will do is it will give you like a good working start so you could start to understand working with elements. It will help you to build a level of sophistication or take you to another level than where you're at. So what ends up happening is that as you start throwing things, you'll realize the limitations of it, and then you'll want to take it to the next level. So maybe you don't understand all of the stuff that's going on musically in this, but it helps you to build your vocabulary about what works and what doesn't, and then you'll start to explore more sophisticated things. On the next level up, you start to get more into things like and actually that can be very, very sophisticated in terms of programming, working with a program like Ableton. So I don't want to diminish its ability. But when you go up to a program like Logic, you will also get a huge amount of tools in terms of loops that just come already with the program, and also MIDI loops, which is really cool because once you get the basic groove laid in there, you can change the existing sounds to other sounds, and that allows you to kind of build songs that way, and then you could just drag these things out and loop. What's really cool about Ableton is that it really works in a non-linear kind of way. So you could basically just set up all kinds of loops and they'll just kind of work, and you could just kind of stay within any kind of format that you want. And as you sort of add elements in and take out elements, it automatically syncs things up, puts them into place. When you work with programs like Logic or Pro Tools, Logic is more of a linear program. So you have to actually lay things out on the timeline from left to right as you want to see them. And therefore, if you're more of a linear thinking type of a person, as opposed to something that just sort of perpetually goes on, and then it doesn't stop until you hit the stop button, that's more of the Ableton type of thinking. Logic is thinking more of a linear time where you have a beginning and you define verses and choruses in a linear way, and then you kind of build it as you go along. So Ableton is more of a jam kind of machine where you can really sit there and just play with ideas and just sort of program and just click on things, and all kinds of fun stuff happens, and it all really syncs up automatically. With Logic, you have to be a little bit more sophisticated in terms of how you place things out, where you lay them out in the arrangement, but you get a better visual overall about what's happening and when it's happening and how you pull it all together. When you get to Pro Tools and an application like that and producing from there, then you're dealing more organically with live musicians because it's really designed more from the perspective of an engineer and mixing. So it's in terms of the speed of editing and working with audio, Pro Tools is obviously to me the best. I don't think there's anything even close to it in terms of its sophistication and speed, in terms of mixing, and all of that. But in terms of a writing platform, it's not necessarily the best. It's not awful in terms of working with MIDI, but it's not designed and set up for that process to be simple. So it basically determines if you have basic skills, then it's a matter of like what kind of music you want to record and how you want to kind of go forward with it. So if you're more electronic DJ music based, go more towards the Ableton FL Studio kind of direction. If you're kind of going a little bit more sophisticated and you want to expand out into a lot more different styles and more acoustic type recording stuff, then you're leaning more towards Logic, where you can start to get into programming and actual sample libraries and things like that, which you can dig into with the ESX synths or EXS synths. And then when you get over, to Pro Tools, then you're dealing more with a mixing recording platform where you're dealing with live musicians in a band, and then the controls and the way that you set up is there. But basically, you start someplace and start at the most simple level until you run into blocks. Yeah, I can't do any more with this. Then you go up to the next level and you keep building it that way. So, although it's always best to learn music and understand your instrument as well as you can, it's not always the only way of doing it. So as long as you have an ear for music and you know what sounds good and what doesn't sound good, if you start the process of just creating things, then that information will come to you. You will learn it because you will have to. You'll say, this isn't sounding the way I want. Why isn't it? And then you start to figure out what that is. Oh, it's in the wrong key. Oh, it's a major chord. I want it to be a minor chord, that type of thing. And then you start to learn more about music and different sounds and different instruments, and you build it from there. So there's my basic thing on Ask Mixing with Mike.